Well, good morning, everyone. I am Mayor Sharita Smith, Mayor of the City of Lima, and we're here and very excited to have each of you here to join us as we discuss the Arcturus Lima Opportunity Zone Fund initiative. The City of Lima, in collaboration with the Lima-Allen County Chamber of Commerce and the Lima-Allen County Chamber Foundation, are partnering with Arcturus Impact Investors to create the Lima Arcturus Impact Opportunity Zone Fund, which is a $25 million commitment to invest capital in growing companies, in community infrastructure, as well as people located in Lima's opportunity zones. To share a little bit more about this initiative, we've invited here this morning Jonathan Tower, founder and managing director of Arcturus, Patrick Mullen, Arcturus Director of Strategic Capital Partnerships, Jed Metzger, President of the Lima-Allen County Chamber of Commerce, as well as Timothy Stanford, Chairperson of the Lima Area Chamber of Commerce Foundation. So the format this morning is we will have a brief Q&A with the individuals that are here with the panel, and then we will open up the floor for any questions. If you have a question, if you will raise your hand, and the city's public information officer, Ms. Jessica Begonia, Jessica, if you'll raise your hand, she will come to you with the mic. So we'll start out talking with Jonathan. Jonathan, can you tell us a little bit about Arcturus Impact Investors and how your company has positively impacted communities across the nation through place-based investments?
Thank you, Mayor. So Arcturus Impact Investors is a 14-year-old investment firm. From day one, we've been focused on partnering with low-income communities, typically ones that have lost their major industry or their major employer, and helping to create pathways to prosperity for the people who live there. It's a novel approach because normally investment firms don't really look at the community or look at the people. They're primarily there to drive profits. We have a different approach, and that's always shaped our values and also our business strategies. We've done about 15 place-based programs across the country. Some of them are cities, some are counties, some are states. And typically in these programs, the local government or foundations will put up 20% of the money, and then our funds contribute the other 80%. We work with the community. We try to figure out, what are they looking for? Is it investment in companies that will create more quality jobs? Is it housing? Is it broadband fiber infrastructure? Is it clean energy? No two communities are the same, so we really work to help think through what the key to achieving a city's long-term objectives is. How do you become the city of your wildest dreams? So we're not the only ones who are doing it. Clearly, we're showing up in a strong community that has a lot of really well articulated ideas and a lot of action moving forward already. So we're kind of coming into some of these prevailing winds and helping this community advance, accelerate, and achieve more of its goals.
Thank you, Jonathan. As a follow-up question, you talked a little bit about a different approach. What drives Arcturus's decisions making? Like, what are your values, and why are you focused on investing in under-resourced and underserved communities, particularly Lima?
Two words that really define what we do in communities are shared prosperity. This is kind of like rising tide. So we can invest in a company, we can create 100 jobs, help it expand, double the size of its factory, but where are those people going to live? Where are they going to shop? What other jobs are they going to create? So effectively, it's a multiplier effect. We make an investment that is going to be a catalyst for other things that happen in the community. We're working on a piece right now that kind of shows the three different phases of a place-based program. This is day one, so this is as early as it gets. Even though we've been talking for 5 years, this is day one of the programs. 3 years from now, 4 years from now, it becomes kind of a mid-stage program, and then we've got a few projects done, and you've got things to see, and then later stage we're wrapping up. We've got data. We can look at social determinants of health, how many people have moved to the community, in infill, how many new housing units, how many new jobs have been created, have companies relocated to these areas. So when we look at a community like Lima, some of the markers that say, hey, things are going to work here. Number one, county seats just work well. There are a lot of reasons for that, but being a county seat, you've got the infrastructure of the government, you've got law firms, you've got the government offices, things like that. You have meds and eds here. Having colleges and hospitals are really important community anchors. Also, most of the cities that we've invested in and done these long-term partnerships, they had their golden era. And then there was 3 decades or 5 decades or 10 decades of outmigration, of unemployment, of things that are, true challenges. And, maybe things have started to kind of rise up, but there are a lot of mistakes that can be made, and we try to avoid the pitfalls. We try to be good partners and think about, how do you achieve growth in a way that does achieve inclusive prosperity, so that it's not, just a select few that are benefiting from these efforts, but this is a shared wealth creation across the board.
Thank you. And Jonathan, part of your job as the Director of Strategic Capital Partnerships is to go out and help build these partnerships, but the basis is the opportunity zones. So tell us a little bit about what are opportunity zones and where are Lima's opportunity zones located?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Maybe as a place to start, opportunity zones, just as a refresher, it's a federal piece of legislation. It was created in 2018 under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and it allowed every state in the country to select 25% of their low-income census tract as these newly formed zones. And the incentive to private investors is to put their capital into funds that go do projects in those zones in the hopes that those projects, revitalize and reinvigorate the communities. And I think what's unique, and we'll get to the second part of the question about where Lima's zones are, what's really unique about Lima is that you have 3 zones that are all, touching each other, are bordering kind of real opportunity, for lack of a better word, in the downtown core. And looking at that, it's not something we see particularly in communities of this size. I mean, if you look at some of the cities where we're active across the country, like a Pittsburgh or others, they may only have 6 or 7 opportunity zones. So to have 3 opportunity zones in your community, I think is a real tremendous chance to really get some capital into those areas and to invest. And I think, what is unique about the way our fund is set up is that we attract investors who are both drawn to the impact that our fund can have, but they're drawn to these types of community partnerships. They look at the ways that we've been working across communities, and bear with me as I drive a slideshow at the same time. But we have national foundational partners like the Kresge Foundation that signed on early to provide a first loss capital guarantee that showed us that, philanthropy does have a role in also incentivizing this type of capital to go to these communities. Government capital has a role in helping incentivize the types of outcomes that you want to see. And that's part of what made this partnership between Arcturus and Lima. We mentioned we've been talking for 5 years. I think that's because we've both been really intentional about, how we want to see this work and how we want to work with all of you. I think we're really excited to be here, and we mentioned we're going to turn this into more of a conversation, which I hope it does with questions. But we're here to learn as much from you about how we participate in these opportunity zones as we are excited about bringing the capital. So to go to the second part of your question, Mayor, if you don't mind hitting the escape key real quick, we do have a map of the opportunity zones pulled up here, just so we can quickly reference it for everyone. So you can see both Census Tract 129, 141, and I believe 126. Thank you. My green on red eyesight up here is not as good as I thought it would be. But all 3 zones, we've spent the last few days, Jonathan and I have now been here. This is my 4th time in your community. And each time we continue to be toured around and find really exciting new projects and opportunities in all of these areas. And I know many of you probably brought ideas about what can happen there. But we spent yesterday with Tim and Jed and the mayor, and Tim was nice enough to even drive us around showing some of the different locations off. So we're certainly excited to learn more today and see what we can do.
Thank you. So one of the backbones of these types of projects are collaboration, and I guess I can also say, too, public and private partnerships. And our relationship, the city's relationship with the Chamber of Commerce, has been invaluable. So I'm going to go to you, Jed, and ask you the next question. How will the Arcturus Lima Opportunity Zone Fund benefit our local businesses?
Well, I think in many ways, I mean, if you have a chance, I think they brought some materials with them. If you look what they have accomplished in other communities like Erie, Pennsylvania, I think that explains it. I mean, they have created jobs, created opportunities for housing when communities needed more housing. And then they've also looked at even manufacturers and looking at some of those strategies with them of how they could invest in them to have a positive outcome. So I think, all this is done seriously, and it takes a process. It takes a while. Oh, okay, sorry. It takes a while in this process to get all these projects in line. But I mean, I think we're at a stage right now with our community and with our businesses is where we need to be at with this project. I know, and Jonathan and Patrick and his staff that we've talked to, they really like this community, and I've already seen some ideas in which they feel would benefit us and benefit their investors. So we're excited. I think businesses should be excited, and the community as a whole should be excited, because we're all working together for the same goal.
Thank you. And Tim, you serve as president of the Lima Chamber Foundation, who's also a separate partner in this, but also as a local real estate broker. Can you talk a little bit about why real estate investment in the heart of our city is important, and why Lima is a great place to invest?
Sure. It's really interesting time for the Arcturus Fund to be able to be presented and to become part of the Lima community. The thing that you need to understand is that the fund is here to become partners with you. That their intent is to be a partner in helping you purchase property, helping you develop property. For lenders out there, it's every day you're confronted with business people who have plans, who have ideas, and they aren't sufficiently capitalized. And so they're here to be able to help bridge that gap and to be able to get projects done. So that's what they're saying. I mean, that's the fund says by being here is that there's real confidence in Lima, and that Lima is a place to grow. So, the importance of back to your question, I guess, really, the importance of looking at downtown and looking at the properties in the opportunity zone is that if you own property right now in one of the census tracts, you may have no better time than ever to sell it. If you own property and it is not as productive, then you may have no better time to improve it. And those are the type of things that you need to look at and be able to engage, and at least look at it as again, for lack of a better word, an opportunity to be able to see some real change. The scale of what $25 million means to this community is hard to describe, because it's not just $25 million. I mean, I see Andy Farley sitting here in front. This is equity that goes into a project, so it can be multiplied by the money you can borrow then from a lender 3, 4, 5 times. So then you're looking at maybe 75, 100, $125 million invested in that area, those areas that were on the map. To put it again into some perspective, Rhodes State College was about a $30 million investment. So we're looking at something that's 4 or 5 times that spread out across the area. So it's an opportunity again to actually make change and to look at, the key word is growth. Jonathan was talking about people moving here. I was going to say, we haven't had population increase since 1970. So we are overdue. We are primed to be able to see real development, real growth that's sustainable.
Thank you. So Patrick, the question that people are wanting to know is, how can businesses and individuals submit a project for investment consideration?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's partly why we're so excited to see such a full room today, and I know there's many on the live stream as well. I mean, I think the easiest way to submit is to just start a conversation with our team. It's not just Jonathan and I here, but we have Andrew Gibbs, VP in our real estate team, and Florian Chalio, who's a senior associate who works with me on the strategic capital partnerships. But often when we come to communities, we have a number of ways in which we kind of source these early stage opportunities, and they almost all come from conversations with folks saying, hey, I'm looking at this project and I may have a funding gap of a certain amount. Would you be a fit? Or, hey, could I talk to you about a piece of property that I own that I'm looking to really kind of develop? And I know that there's many things that maybe drive you that way. We've heard about a number of city or county or other entity kind of RFPs and RFQs that are going out there for projects. And if you're saying, hey, I would love to have responded to this, but I'm not quite sure how I put my funding stack together, maybe that's an opportunity where we could collaborate. Or if it's a longstanding project that you've been thinking about for a while, understanding kind of how we can, fit in and potentially be a source. And we've run our own processes in local communities before. I think we're going to take some time to work closely with the city team and the chamber team and other stakeholders to figure out what makes sense here. But one of the things we're really excited about is we're building a local, advisory committee with folks that can also provide that input and give kind of early direction. We want to have more events like this. We obviously will be more present in Lima. You can't do something like this without being in the community, and I think having boots on the ground and having people here will really help kind of go further. So it's a multi kind of phased approach, and I think we'd love to hear from you on. I know we've got a couple more questions, so don't. I'm not trying to go off script, but we really do want to hear you as we kind of pause here to understand, what are some of the types of things you're working on and how we might get involved.
Okay, we're going to go to Jonathan for our last question. And Jonathan, you hit on this a little bit this morning about place-based investments and the importance of finding balance and bringing in new people, but also not displacing individuals that were there. So if you can kind of hit on that a little bit, and also just hit a little bit about how you evaluate a project for potential investment, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Sure. So, gentrification is not a bad word. We want to see our communities prosper. We want to see people prosper. One of the negative side effects of gentrification in some places has been that people can't afford to live there anymore. So that's something that we really try to pay attention to. If just creating 100 jobs in a town can push people out. So, we monitor the housing prices in a market. If we need to add more workforce, if we need to add more affordable, it was interesting in Erie, Pennsylvania, 95% of the available housing stock was affordable already. So they said, no, we don't need affordable. We need to go kind of more market rate because we want more nurses and CNAs to move back downtown. So, we look at the stock, we look at the available demand, we look at the supply, and we try to make sure that happens. Also, varies from community to community, but high percentage of the investments that we make are creating jobs for people who might not have had college educations, people who might not have skills training. For every engineering job we create or a skilled welding job we create, it might be jobs that would come in. For people who might have been looking for work for quite some time. So creating at both sides of the spectrum is really key to maintaining the balance in an economy here. On the second question, really about how we evaluate, at the high level, we're picking the community first, and then we're finding the opportunities within that community. And rewinding the clock, I met Mayor Berger 5 years ago at a conference, and he was chairman of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and we had a really good time talking, and that was really the start of it. Then Arcturus did a competitive RFP, and we sent out a proposal to basically every mayor in the country, and we said, come to us with your most important unfunded community development projects. Tell us who will benefit from this. Is this purely a subsidy for developers, or will the people who live there actually be able to participate in the wealth creation? And then thirdly, if we're putting up 20 million, the city will need to put up 5. Where's that 5 going to come from? And Lima did not have that 5 million defined at that point in time, and it was a great application, really articulate explanation of the opportunities, but also the challenges in Lima. It wasn't until COVID and the ARPA legislation came through that the city was able to put together the funding. City council approved it, and we were able to launch. But it's important to note that we got 41 applications for this. Lima, we picked Lima as much as Lima picked us. It was very much a mutual two-way street in figuring this out. So we saw the markers of what we look for in an investment. And now we're here. So you talk about, okay, what are we actually looking for? Most of the companies that we invest in have 5 million of EBITDA. We do smaller companies. So think about it as $3 to $5 million of annual income, and they're looking to do significant growth. we're not competing with banks. If they can go to a bank, they're going to a bank. We're doing equity investment, so we're probably investing alongside the bank. Company says, I want to build a new factory, it's $25 million. The bank says, we'll do half, we do the other half. That's kind of how this would typically work. On the real estate side, we do a lot of housing, but we also do factories. We just did a 300,000 square foot office building for the District of Columbia government. So we were told about a community swimming pool here the other day. I mean, there are things like this that we could be looking at here outside of housing, but housing is, I think, the #1 challenge right now in Lima. That's where a lot of our focus would be. So we would be looking to do developments, ground up developments of 50 to 100 units. We also have a relatively new strategy of buying single family homes, paying $50K to fix them up, and then making them, it's basically a rent to own strategy where people can rent, and at the tail end of the term, they've accumulated equity as renters to be able to hopefully get an FHA or VA loan to buy that property and become the long-term owners of it. We're also doing existing buildings like offices or government buildings or things like that, doing office to residential conversions. A lot of strategy around that. Construction costs are so high right now that if you can find an existing building and make it into what you want it to be, you're probably saving money as opposed to doing ground up construction. So when we see opportunities like this, we're looking at the full gamut and trying to fill a market need. The other categories are clean energy infrastructure. We do a fair amount of solar or energy saving technologies for factories and things like that. We're doing a lot of broadband fiber right now. 8 counties in Colorado, 5 in Maine. We're working in western Pennsylvania on broadband fiber. So a lot of things like that we're really interested in exploring whether we can be a helpful partner in some of these areas here. But I think housing is probably job #1, and investing in companies, growth capital for companies is #2, based on what we know right now. And over 10 years, the market and the economy will change 29 times. So what we're saying right now might actually be different in 3 years. Maybe the opportunity is investing all in companies first and housing second. But based on where we are right now, that's really the priority.
Thank you, Jonathan. We will now go to questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and Jessica will bring the mic. Okay, thank you, Mike.
Just a quick, simple question. Is all the investments going to be limited just to these 3 tracks?
Generally speaking, that's true. The rules that Congress laid out say that 70% of your tangible assets of a company need to be in the opportunity zone. So if you imagined a broadband fiber network and we used opportunity zone capital to do it, so 70% of the fiber would be in the zone and 30% could be outside. If you have a company with 3 factories, 2 in, 1 out might work. Sometimes buildings straddle census tract lines, but generally speaking, we're looking for opportunity zone investments, and the nexus, the headquarters, most of the tangible property would be in those tracts.
Okay, thank you. And I think that'll help spread it out, even if it's just in the 3 tracks. What is invested there may free up other opportunities outside of that area, which is still going to benefit the rest of the community.
Should take pressure off housing supply in other areas, and also, I mean, we've moved companies. We invested in a tier 1 automotive seat manufacturer and moved them into a Detroit opportunity zone. They weren't in the right neighborhood, and then we moved them into the right neighborhood. We bought a 100,000 square foot factory and kept the jobs. And I mean, sometimes it makes sense to move. There's a risk of the tax tail wagging the dog. I mean, you're not going to change your entire business strategy just to meet one element of the tax code. But a lot of the companies that we're investing in, they're outgrowing their factories already. So if you're outgrowing your factory and you have to move, all right, let's move you to a place where we can maximize these tax incentives.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Sure.
You've alluded that the fund and the portion that Arcturus has contributed is actually a national fund. But if there are accredited investors in the Lima community that actually have capital gains that they can exchange, can they participate in that national fund so they have a sense that their investment is actually, contributing to growth in the local community? Thank you.
Yeah, you're correct with the disclaimer that we're a national family of impact investment funds. So our funds are national in scope, but as we've alluded to, we create these place-based partnerships, which now we have $25 million committed to Lima to deploy out of those national funds here. And we have run into individuals who you've made the appropriate disclaimer, and now might be the time I make my chief compliance officer happy and go to our tiny print disclaimer slide. But certainly the Opportunity Zone funds and the nature of what we do are towards accredited and institutional investors. But if there were capital gains and folks that had interest in doing that, we're raising a new fund at the moment. So the Arcturus Opportunity Zone Fund 2024. So we would love to have that conversation to make sure the appropriate parameters were there. But we are very interested in if there are folks who want to help support, that's great. But to be clear, we're not here to fundraise. We're here to commit the capital, and when there's mutual opportunities to have that happen, we're open to having those conversations.
I was just going to add in Erie, the whole program and the conversation started with the Erie Community Foundation. So they put in the $5 million, and then we were going to match it. And then Erie Insurance, which is a Fortune 400 company, they have capital gains every day. They're trading stocks and bonds all the time, and they said that they would like to invest too, and they've invested in 3 funds in a row with us now. So that became a really good partner. So we have a lot of banks, commercial banks as investors, insurance companies, and other corporations that are looking to benefit their communities, and they call it corporate social responsibility, but they're also looking to make money and reduce their taxes.
Could I actually, I'm going to loop in a few of our colleagues here, because I think it's helpful. We've heard a lot anecdotally. We talked about Erie as an example, and I just flipped on the slide to our kind of Erie flagship block project, which is one you read about when you read about Arcturus and Erie. And I think it's a real collaborative opportunity, where, as Jonathan mentioned, the Community Foundation was the initial first loss capital investor, but that project involves working with the City of Erie, the Erie Downtown Development Corporation, developers, different investors. I mean, it's not like we're coming to town and saying, hey, we're here in Erie now, we'll solve all the problems. It takes a coalition. And so, Andrew, do you want to talk a little bit about the flagship project? And
Sure, happy to. We're really proud about our investments in downtown Erie. Erie, similar to Lima, population peaked in the 60s and 70s, and hadn't really seen a lot of new development downtown, particularly for new housing, in about 50 years. And so we had a unique opportunity in downtown Erie to partner with the Erie Economic Development Council and help them acquire buildings downtown Erie that had been vacant and need of repair. And as well as a McDonald's that happened to just drop out of the sky, probably in the 80s and 90s. Your typical suburban McDonald's with the parking lot in the front. That made no sense to be in the middle of a block in downtown Erie. And as you can imagine, it attracted some interesting things out, and it was just a great opportunity to connect an old historic commercial corridor. And so we bought the McDonald's. We tore it down, and we put up a new mixed-use building with 30 market rate units. As Jonathan was saying, there was a big demand for really kind of workforce housing for some of the nurses. And we put in a rock climbing gym. We partnered with a rock climbing operator based out of Pittsburgh. And to my surprise, climbing is one of the fastest growing sports in the U.S. And so it's a great opportunity to enhance kind of some of the health objectives of downtown Erie. It's a gym as well. And then we put a new parking garage in as well, right behind it. There's a huge parking deficit in downtown Erie, and that was preventing a lot of folks from coming downtown and shopping and eating. So that's fully built out now. It's all leased up. We have a food hall in one of the historic buildings and a grocery store as well. And if any of you all are in Erie, please reach out. We'll let you know where it is. But that was a really fun project to work on.
Thanks. Sorry, I think I hijacked someone's question, but I thought that was a good chance to interject on that too.
That was a good lead-in, though, because my question was for the folks that have since we're talking about housing, the folks that have real estate or that want to purchase real estate, it doesn't have to be a project in place at this time. We can work together, if you want to call it, to create the project from someone's idea. Is that what the premise of this really is?
Yeah, I mean, I'll, as the mic's passing to Andrew, I'll say, it runs the gamut. We're certainly not coming here saying, come to us once you've done steps 1 through 11 and just come to us for step 12, right? That's not, sometimes we see those, but not all the time. A lot of times, and I think even using Erie as an example, there had been a lot of work and conversation that had been done to my earlier point, but there were still some holes, and having those holes around, like, hey, we don't have the big equity investment in here. We might be able to go get some debt, we might be able to go get some other pieces, but we're lacking this institutional level investor that could be like an Arcturus. That's really what brought it together, and we played a role in helping kind of look at some of those designs and everything. But I mean, Andrew, I'll let you speak a little bit more to it as well.
Sure, yeah. I think one of the key distinctions is that we're not a developer here in Lima, right? We're an equity investor, and so we're typically partnering with local developers. You guys know this area very well. You know the permitting process. You know how to hire best-in-class general contractors and help oversee and execute that. And so, we'd love to kind of meet you all who are involved in that type of business. At the same time, we will be proactive in looking at development sites here that we think make a lot of sense, and talking to some of the developers that might be interested in partnering with it on it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask on the affordable housing end of things. That's actually what we're in the process of working on, have been for the last year and a half, working towards, and that's in 3D printing of houses. So we have a couple machines that we've printed one house, and we have a couple machines on the way for that. And so we're interested in. We really feel like this is an opportunity for affordable housing, probably maybe once in a generation type. And what we've seen actually throughout the country happen oftentimes in the 3D printing is that once this new technology shows up, it gets maybe hijacked by the custom builders. So it is a neat technology. We'd like to see that happen in this community because we live here. We want to see this be successful in the community. So you mentioned that the companies, 70% of the company be located within the opportunity zone. We're looking, we just wondered how that would work with affordable housing and real estate, how that would work potentially for helping in funding in that, because we really see an opportunity here where we can make affordable housing work, and how does that work in these opportunity zones in urban infill is what we call it, but lots that are already in the city that maybe there's no longer a structure on those, that we can turn those into affordable single family potentially is what we're looking for, where the streets and utilities infrastructure is already built out, which can then be translated into affordable housing in this zone. How does that work with your fund?
I mean, if you were, I don't know your business model, but if you said, okay, we need 10 more 3D printing machines, and we're going to locate them in the opportunity zone, and the headquarters of our construction and assembly operation will be there too, that would look like a qualified opportunity zone business. And then if you build 10 homes outside of the zone for customers and then you sell them, like, that's okay. It's okay to export from the zone. But if you built 100 homes as rental properties, single family home rental properties, we'd probably need more than 70 of them to be in the zone, and 30, no more than 30 of them to be outside of the zone. So it's really around the tangible property ultimately. We do have other tools. We're U.S. Treasury certified CDE, so we can do new markets tax credits. Those are specific to low-income census tracts that are not opportunity zones necessarily. And we do have other tools, but yeah, the nexus and really the hard equipment would typically need to be in the zone.
We can also help you buy lots, improve those lots as well. So we do it that way within the zone as well. Yeah.
That was one thing we have.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so my name's Gina, or Jenny. I am small potatoes compared to what I'm hearing about the fiber optics and the 3D printing. I see my little coffee cups. Okay. This is.
Great coffee.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. This has been my labor of love, this corner. The coffee shop, Joey's. Joey's has been here forever. The coffee shop that you visited today is the oldest building in the square. That corner, like I said, and I guess I'm questioning you as far as me being small potatoes. I have the facility to maybe possibly have an apartment above Joey's or office space. Over my coffee shop, I have additional seating area that I'm working on. I want to put a sweet shop next door. Am I out of the realm of what you're thinking? Because, like I said, I don't have investors. This is strictly, my husband and I just running with it.
Do you own the
Trying to-
building?
Yes.
You do?
We have all three.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Yes, so, yeah, we do own that property.
How would you answer that, Andrew? I mean, I
And so you're looking for capital to help you renovate.
Possibly,
and
if it's there,
expand the
available.
business, yeah. I think that one of the key requirements of. Thanks.
Well, first of all, beautiful building, and look. I haven't been in the coffee shop, so we'll check it out on our way out. Yeah, that'd be great. But potentially is the short answer. One of the key conditions of qualifying for an opportunity zone of investment is that you need to spend at least what you purchased on the land or the property itself in capital improvements. So, what was that?
That's been done.
Okay, yeah. So, and there's also certain little hurdles, like it's challenging for us to partner with folks that already own the building. You have to do a fresh new sale. You can't be cashing out investors in that deal. The way the Treasury Department really set it up is it wanted it to be for folks that are not necessarily just looking for a quick cash out, but are desperate need for capital. So there's creative ways to structure around that, but as long as those kind of key conditions are met, we'd have to just take a look at it. But it's potential opportunity. Yeah. And the other thing is typically there is a minimum investment size we look for in some of these projects. As you can imagine, there's a lot of legal structuring and fees involved, accountants, in just setting up these deals. And those fees can be quite expensive as a percentage of a project cost. And so, I don't want to say what the minimum investment is, but as you kind of think intuitively, we don't want those fees to be a big percentage of the cost to try to make sure that they're not really eating into returns. So there's a lot of economies of scale, but maybe there's an opportunity to use that as an anchor and do some other projects. So we try to get as creative as possible to look at that.
Hi. Based off you guys' experience in investing in these opportunity zones, have you guys noticed any patterns or trends that have led to any more success more than others in certain industries?
I'd say, one of the things that we have in here that I think is really helpful is sort of, a lot of people ask why partner with a group that's, from outside the community beyond just this kind of capital multiplier. I think that's a big part of it is when we say, hey, can we bring in multiple types of capital to really drive to this local outcome? What does that look like? And I think the things that really help us, kind of as trends that go towards positive outcomes are things like transparency. So that's one of the key critiques I think you hear in the Opportunity Zone legislation is as it stands today, there's not a ton of transparency that's actually needed within some of that, right? They don't require that you report more than just kind of going to the federal government at the end of the year on your tax return, but we go the opposite way, and we have copies of our impact report up here that we'd be happy for those of you to come get while supplies last. I'll say they're kind of popular across the way at the chamber breakfast. But also the kind of local advisory component and having the input from local community members as we're going through the project, I think has been key, right? Again, it's like Andrew mentioned and talking about Erie and Jonathan mentioned when talking about other communities, we don't come in necessarily saying, look, we know all the answers and we're going to come do X, Y, and Z. It's about working with you to say, hey, what meets your community needs and how can our capital kind of help go further in that? And I think I'd love to toss it to my colleague as well, Florian Chalio, who helps really lead the impact practice at our firm and is in the process of authoring 2023's impact report that should be live here relatively shortly. And we're actually featuring Lima as a case study in it about how a program came together and kind of covering the excitement about, what works and what we're looking to do. So Florian, you want to add some few comments?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I would just add one thing, what I think can be really helpful in a lot of communities is to not rely on just the private capital to do all of the work. And I think that's what's unique about Arcturus's model and also something that's unique about our partnership with Lima. And so, now is a time when there's money that we are bringing in through Arcturus. There's also a lot of opportunities for grant dollars from the state, from the federal government, through a lot of legislation that's been passed over the last 4 years or so. And in some of the communities that we've worked in or seen that have been most successful, they've been really thoughtful about how do we combine sort of what we can do locally, money that we can get from other sources to fund things that we at Arcturus might not be able to do, because we are focused on impact, but we're also focused on making sure that there is a return for our investors and for the city. And so I would say that it's been really helpful to work with Mayor Smith, who I think her and her administration has a really good pulse on, what are investments and investments that we can make and policies that we can make that are in line or in partnership with what we're doing at Arcturus. Yeah, so so on the taking a quick digression to our impact report, which Patrick mentioned here, this is we partner with the Initiative for the Competitive Inner City, which is an organization that was created originally by Michael Porter at Harvard Business School and is very focused on trying to understand the different ways in which low-income communities across the country can develop and prosper. And so they are sort of our third-party impact audit, and I think that helps keep us a little bit more accountable to make sure that we are hitting our goals for impact as much as we are for financial returns as well.
You said that you guys have been talking for 5 years, and this is basically day one. So what kind of time frame are we looking at? I mean, are you currently looking at potential investments now? Are you waiting for investments? I mean, just kind of looking at timeline that way.
Sure. So we've been working on some things in the background in anticipation of the launch of the program. So we're not starting cold. There's a lot of time and usually a lot of expense that goes into just, getting a project to being shovel ready. You've got permitting, site selection, all of that. So there's only so much we can do, but there's been a fair amount of preparatory work, and I think we're familiar with the markets and certain sites and certain partnerships that would be successful here. Don't hang me on my words if I'm wrong, but I'd like to see, a project announced certainly within the first year, we could do better than that too. But getting from first meeting to a closing usually takes at least 6 months. So we'd have to find something now that would move quickly to get that done in the first year. We can give progress reports too. The next phase, and I was talking before about kind of the 3 phases of a place-based program. By year 3 or year 4, we want to see, it's not copycats. We want to see other out-of-town investment firms finding interest in Lima the way that we did today. And that's an early sign of success. That means that by no means are we the first movers. I mean, the city has been here for a long time. There's a lot of real estate, there's investment activity already, but as out-of-town institutional capital, if we have some demonstration of proof, then other firms will be coming in and hopefully doing similar things. And we invite that kind of competition. It's not like, hey, we want to have 99% market share of all residential development. In order for us to succeed, other capital has to come in and work on other parts of the city too. And they would probably not be opportunity zone investors, so they'll be focusing on the census tracts that we're not. And then, by the 10th year, we collect annual data, we report it, we're very transparent with that. You see what the results are over that period of time. But deals should be closing quickly. It can be, sometimes it's frustrating. You come 9 times and you still don't have a signed term sheet, and sometimes that can happen. Some of that's market dependent. Some of that is, finding the right company or the right company to move here locally. But luckily, we've got a pretty good jump start on that already.
Okay. All right. We have a little bit of time, so I will first ask our panel, are there any closing remarks before we close?
That was incredibly well timed. I like that.
Did that say happy day?
No, my only closing remark is, I've gone to the thank you slide, has my email on it, reach out. Patrick@arcterrace.com. Would love to start a conversation. I think we'll be here obviously after to connect. We'll loop in, all of our colleagues here on the same email thread, but I think we really want to begin some of those dialogues and those conversations. And to Jonathan's point, there has been a lot of, I think, the proper amount of pre-work done over those very productive 5 years. I think we enjoyed the kind of process to get here, but it's allowed us to get more familiar and get to a point where I think we're comfortable kind of jumping in and excited about what the future holds for Arcterrace and Lima. So with that in mind, certainly feel free. And I'm not going to wrap us up. We'll let the others give their closing remarks. But again, I'll put a plug for the impact report and just really emphasize, the best way to start the conversation is just to reach out, and we'd love to start those when you're ready. So,
Jonathan or Tim, or
I just thank you all for your interest. A lukewarm response would not be encouraging, but we had already seen how much enthusiasm there was from this community. What we do works best when the community cares, when people have a vested interest, and you grew up here, your families grew up here, you want to see a brighter future. These are the elements that we look for, and we've already seen it, so we're really happy to be part of this community.
thank you.
I guess just in closing, I probably would double down a little bit on what Patrick was saying about reaching out, contacting them. The Arcterrace folks have been remarkably accessible and responsive. They've got four people from the firm here today, but there are many more, and the degree of expertise and the resources they have just the surface today has been revealed. So do reach out, and they will do everything they can in their powers to be able to bring projects to market.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you all for coming, and most importantly, believing in Lima and what our future not only can be, but what it is. When I look around this room, I see that. And if any community can do it, we can. We're going to beat Erie. Thank you all.